from the drama-free true crime destination, bringing you past the headlines, straight to the core of justice, where the truth stands firm and the story is set in stone. This is The Final Word. One defendant is granted a new trial. One defendant decides he will represent himself, and one defendant has a courtroom outburst. It's 3 the hard way on a Friday. I'm Ernest Bethea, the last outlaw. This is The Final Word. A Massachusetts mother convicted of brutally killing her 2 young sons will get a new trial after the Massachusetts Supreme Court ruled that the jury never saw evidence related to her mental illness. In a unanimous ruling issued on Thursday, the state's highest court stated that 51-year-old LaTarsha Sanders was entitled to a new trial, writing in its opinion, "We hold that the exclusion of the defendant's relevant medical records related to the diagnoses or treatment of mental illness constituted prejudicial error, and as a result, the defendant is entitled to a new trial." Sanders was found guilty of first-degree murder in 2022 in connection with the deaths of her 2 sons, 8-year-old Edson Marlon Brito and 5-year-old Lasan Brito. According to the facts outlined in the opinion, Sanders had no documented history of mental illness before the boys were found dead. But in the days leading up to their deaths, her family members said her appearance and behavior changed. Sanders was disheveled, and she said she needed to protect Marlon and Lasan from their grandmother and her older sister Shalia because she feared they would poison the children. On February 5, 2018, emergency personnel were called to Sanders' home in Brockton, Massachusetts, while she was having a medical episode during which she would scream, flail her arms, kick her legs, and throw herself back and forth while claiming that someone named Akeem and his father were going to kill her. After Sanders was taken to the hospital, police found her 2 boys dead upstairs. The 2 boys were found tucked into their beds, dead, and stabbed more than 100 times. Lasan was wearing a Spider-Man bathrobe and had a broken candle shoved down his throat. When police interviewed Sanders after the grisly discovery, she eventually told them that stabbing her children would make the Illuminati happy. During jailhouse phone calls, Sanders' family said she mentioned her plan to write a book and repeatedly described herself as evil. Following Sanders' arrest, a doctor said Sanders was grossly psychotic, and when she killed her sons and diagnosed her with schizophrenia spectrum and other psychotic disorders. However, the judge in her first trial ruled that none of her medical records, amounting to thousands of pages, could be presented as evidence because they were all generated after the alleged crime, an irrelevant time frame. The Massachusetts Supreme Court disagreed. After their ruling, Sanders' attorney, Robert Shaw, told local NBC affiliate WBTS, "The enormous pain and loss caused by this tragedy know no measure." LaTarsha Sanders was a loving mother who suffered from profound mental illness and was consumed by a psychotic state, completely untethered from reality when her children were killed. Sanders' case has drawn comparisons to the trial of Lindsay Clancy, which is underway in the same courthouse where Sanders' new trial could take place. Clancy is accused of strangling her 3 young children to death. The defense claims the mother was suffering from postpartum psychosis at the time of her children's deaths, making her not criminally responsible. A Florida plastic surgeon charged with first-degree murder said he plans to represent himself when he goes to trial. 47-year-old Dr. Tomas Kozowski is accused of killing 41-year-old Stephen Kazi, whose body was never found after he went missing in March of 2023. Kazi was an attorney representing a client who was suing Kozowski, who was representing himself in the civil case. During a hearing on Thursday, Kozowski told Pinellas Circuit Judge Joseph Maloney that he also intended to represent himself in his murder trial, which is scheduled to begin September 14th. During the hearing, which was covered by the Tampa Bay Times, Kozlowski's now former defense attorney, Daniel Hernandez, stated in an email that Kozlowski refuses to sign consent forms for a doctor's evaluation. Co-counsel Jay McNeil confirmed the email to the judge. It is also stated that Kozlowski did not want evidence presented in his defense and that he wanted to act as his own counsel. Kozlowski reportedly told the judge, "It's true that I don't want any mitigation or evidence presented in Phase 2, and it's true that I don't want Mr. Hernandez speaking for me, and I don't want Ms. McNeil speaking for me." The judge told Kozlowski, "It doesn't make any sense for you to ask for that when ultimately what you're asking for is a life sentence if you're convicted of first-degree murder." Kozlowski reportedly responded, "It makes sense to me." The defendant told the court he also wants to throw out every motion his previous attorneys have filed on his behalf, many of which address ways to exclude the death penalty as an option at sentencing. Kozlowski reportedly said the motions were riddled with inaccuracies, and most of the motions are not in line with what I want. This was not the first time Kozlowski had issues with his attorneys. In May 2025, Kozlowski's attorneys withdrew from the case for ethical reasons, and the defendant told the court he was still interviewing attorneys to represent him. He said at the time he did not want to represent himself at trial. Kazi was representing one of Kozlowski's former employers in a lawsuit relating to billing issues. Around the time Kazi went missing, Kozlowski's Toyota Tundra pickup truck was seen outside of Kazi's law firm, according to police. Surveillance video captured someone getting out of the truck and going inside with a backpack and gloves while carrying a large box. 2 hours later, the same man exited the law office wearing a different outfit and pulling a large cart. Kozlowski was arrested after police executed a search warrant at his office and allegedly found Kazi's blood in the office bathroom. Kazi's DNA was also allegedly found in the trunk of Kozlowski's vehicle. Police said they found a bag containing brass knuckles, a stun gun, duct tape, masks and syringes with a paralyzing agent, and other sedatives at Kozlowski's home. Kazi's body has never been found. A Florida man accused of murdering his wife in front of their 7-year-old daughter lost his temper in court and began yelling in Spanish when a judge refused to let him represent himself. 58-year-old Onelio Castro Arroyo is charged with second-degree murder in the death of his estranged wife, with whom he had a troubled relationship for several years, according to investigators. At a brief court hearing on Wednesday, prosecutors presented a plea offer to the defendant that would have required him to serve 20 years in prison, according to local station WTVJ. Castro Arroyo rejected the plea deal and began yelling in Spanish at the judge, telling her, "I don't believe in this, and I don't trust the attorney or you." When the defendant asked to represent himself, the judge declined the request. Records reviewed by Court TV show that Castro Arroyo had previously attempted to represent himself without success. This wasn't the first time the defendant had been disruptive in court. At a 2023 hearing in a separate case regarding allegations that he had been siphoning gas, he repeatedly said, "I don't understand what I'm doing here," according to local station WPLG. Prosecutors said Castro Arroyo confessed to stabbing the victim 16 times while she was sitting in the driver's seat of her 2014 Cadillac SRX on May 21, 2019. The couple's 7-year-old daughter was allegedly sitting in the back seat during the attack and later told police that her daddy killed her mother. Investigators found a bloody knife and blood-soaked clothes in a dumpster outside the defendant's home. After the killing, Castro Arroyo called 911, according to investigators. 2 people on an apartment balcony witnessed the violent attack, according to prosecutors. At the time of his arrest in 2019, Castro Arroyo was on probation after pleading guilty to first-degree arson in 2015. In that case, he was sentenced to 5 years in prison and 10 years of probation. The arrest for second-degree murder prompted prosecutors to revoke Castro Arroyo's probation, and he was sentenced to 60 years in prison, which he is currently serving. The defendant is due to return to court for a hearing on October 19th. Thank you so much for joining me here at the drama-free true crime destination. Please be sure to follow Bethea's Byte Reloaded all over social media and support the channel through PayPal and Cash App. You can get your true crime news right here with no gimmicks, no drama, and no BS. This is Bethea's Byte, and it's reloaded.